Hello and welcome back to the Healthcare Executive Insights podcast. My name is Elliot Sloan with the Macallan Group. Today, we're very excited to welcome our guest, Mr. James Farese, who is the founder and CEO of ReachLink. James, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Elliot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So tell me a little bit more about your professional background and what led you to create ReachLink.
Yeah, absolutely. So ReachLink, I founded ReachLink in 2019, originally as an aftercare solution for individuals discharging from brick and mortar substance use treatment centers. I worked in the substance use treatment space, brick and mortar facilities since 2015. I owned and operated facilities, and I always looked at data and watched trends, and I noticed that a lot of our clients we're in South Florida. So a lot of our clients would come down from the Midwest and the Northeast, come down for 30, 60, 90-day episodes of care and return home. These clients would typically do really well while they were in inpatient treatment. And when they kind of made that transition back to the real world, sometimes that transitional process could get choppy. And so the original thesis for ReachLink was to be an aftercare solution for these people that were discharging as a way to kind of extend the continuum of care or smooth that transitional process. The idea was that if they could stay connected to someone that was somewhat familiar to them, that had a background in mental health therapy, that would hopefully reduce recidivism and kind of help that process. So with that backdrop, started the company in 2019. With that thesis, 2020 COVID happens, and we're an online platform with some social workers, and start getting all these requests for more general mental health cases, anxiety, depression, workplace stress, et cetera. And so we decided to expand the scope from just addiction aftercare to more general mental health. And the rest, they say, is history, right? COVID stuck around a lot longer than anyone initially thought. And we just found ourselves in a watershed moment where the whole country had to go online to receive pretty much all of their healthcare services overnight. So we never really were intended to be a venture track scale up type company. It was supposed to be a boutique kind of operation, and obviously that wasn't meant to be. So we spent from 2020 onwards really thinking about the right way to scale, right? And fast forward to today, we're in network on a national basis with most of the major payers. We have a number of options for people that are looking for mental health. We have a national network of licensed clinical social workers that are contractors. They decide how much or how little they want to work, and they're all kind of like a gig economy type platform. We are the technology provider and the care provider both in one. So we're the ones that have the contracts with the payers. We do all that negotiating. On the therapist side, it's really just, you sign in, do your session, documentation, sign out. We handle all the customer service, billing, credentialing, contracting, everything that goes into running a healthcare back office to enable the clinicians to be able to spend as much time providing care as they can.
Wow. You were in the right place at the right time to have a telemedicine platform.
Right. Yeah. Looking back, it was, the serendipity was just, it was really just right place, right time. Like everyone's like, oh, that's crazy how you timed. I'm like, I had no idea. I just wanted to provide, an extended continuum for addiction, care. And, it was supposed to happen, I guess. So,
yeah,
happy that we were in a place where we could help people, but, obviously, there were pros and cons, obviously, to kind of how it happened, but
sure.
We're in a good place. We're in a good place today.
Yeah. Tell me more about the size of the operation. How many patients are you seeing on a monthly basis?
So I can't get into all the specifics, but I can say, we do tens of thousands of sessions a year. Our provider count is in the hundreds. So we have about 25-ish full-time employees, and we're constantly growing that headcount.
Wow. And you're treating patients throughout the whole country, you said?
Not the whole country. There's some states that we don't operate in.
Got it.
But for practical purposes, yeah, we're distributed.
Got it. So just as an industry topic, as a society, it seems like up until recently, we've always overlooked the importance of behavioral and mental health. It's kind of been something that people didn't want to admit they might have a problem, and society didn't want to figure out how to treat it. I think with the pandemic, it exacerbated it and it put a spotlight on mental health issues. Why do you think we've always overlooked the importance of treating this early and making sure everyone knows what's available?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways you could go, with that question. I don't think it's one kind of silver bullet answer, but I think two big factors for me that stand out. One, I think it's only relatively recently that we've really kind of begun to understand the relationship between mental health and primary care, or physical health. Yep. I think that as we better understand that relationship, we're already seeing more emphasis being put on mental health care, but I think that trend will continue as we further understand the link between those things. So I think that's part of it, is just beginning to understand that relationship, that mental health is healthcare, and that mental health, positive mental health, begets, a quality whole health, right?
Yeah, and I think impacts everything.
Yeah, for 100%. And I think the other part of that I think stands out to me as one of the many things or many reasons why we see some of the trends we're seeing today is I think that if I break my arm and go to the emergency room, right, that's a form of asking for help, right? I broke my arm, I don't know how to fix it. I go to the doctor, they're going to put a cast on it, set it, whatever, right? With mental health, obviously it's much more nuanced than that. But with mental health, people are asking for help all the time, right? In different ways. They may not be saying, "Hey, I'm anxious and I need help," or "I have this trauma and I can't get through it," right? But there's different ways that people, ask for help, maybe non-verbally, right? Behavior, whatever. And I think as a society, we're also just beginning to understand what those signs of reaching out and asking for help look like. And so as things like suicide make more of an impact on society, I think, and other things, but that's a major one. I think more people are keen to look into what asking for help looks like when someone needs help. And then once they understand what those signs are, then they can understand the other side of the coin and what to do in those kind of situations, right? Because I think you have to have a support team. It doesn't have to be just a therapist. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but you have to have a support group around you, friends, family, coworkers, whatever, that kind of, help you navigate life, right? And the therapist can be a great part of that. So I think as more attention is put on what asking for help looks like and how to respond to that, I think that's why you're seeing more attention be placed on mental health at the healthcare level and just society at large.
Sure. Yeah, I think you make some really valid points there that, people are definitely starting to realize the connectivity between mental health and physical health. It seems that if you're not mentally strong, then your body starts breaking down in other places. If you're dealing with high levels of stress and anxiety, then you start becoming more susceptible to disease. And it's unfortunate that it's taken so long to, as a society, make those connections. And it seems like they don't even teach people how to go through simple exercises from an early age to have a healthy mindset, right? Whether it's breathing techniques when you're frustrated, anxiety, meditation, mindfulness, or just positive affirmations, telling yourself that you are going to reach your goals and, constantly planting positive seeds in your subconscious mind. I think it's so overlooked, the power of doing little things like that, or journaling and writing down a lot of the issues that you have in your head, right? If you keep it all in your head, it just starts breaking you down, rather than speaking to a professional, speaking to your loved one, a family member. I heard once that the average person says like 4,500 words in a day, but think about how many thoughts in a day you have that go through your mind that you don't actually get out, or you don't, share with anyone. It's much, much higher than the actual words you speak. So there's so much, I think, that is now starting to be practice on how we can start teaching people the importance of mental health from an early age, even in the at-home setting.
I agree 100%. And, like you said, there's so many people that suffer in silence that we just don't know about. And I think a lot of it, like the positive affirmations, journaling, all these tools, in the mental health, care kit, if you will. I think it becomes really about trying things and finding out what works for you, right? Like journaling might work for me, it might not work for you, or vice versa. Right. And then being consistent with that, right? A lot of it is the consistency, right?
Sure.
So making sure once you find what works to maintain a consistency with those coping mechanisms that work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no perfect formula. Everyone's going to have to treat it in a way that suits them best. But you said something interesting, which I totally agree with. Everyone has mental issues to a certain degree. I believe that just like you go to your family medicine doctor every year for wellness visits to get blood screenings and other screenings, everyone, I believe, should speak to a mental health professional maybe once a year or more if they need it, to just check in and see how you're doing mentally. Do you think we'll ever get to that point where it's kind of part of your yearly annuals? And is it something that insurance needs to cover more and promote more to get people thinking in that direction?
Yeah. So I think the short answer is yes. I think a lot of the insurance companies have done a great job at understanding this link between, physical health and mental health, and have put a big emphasis on it. I think you're seeing at a societal level, I think you're seeing a lot of destigmatization as more and more, celebrities, actors, athletes speak out about their mental health struggles. I think it becomes more relatable. It becomes less, it becomes less scary to talk about, and ask for help, like we talked about earlier. So I think the short answer is yes. I think insurance is doing a great job. I think that should be continued. Insurance companies are doing a great job. I think they should continue, and I think we will see that trend continue, given our desire to understand those links between whole health and mental health better. And yeah, I think we're already on that path, right? Like there's definitely a long way to go, but it's leaps and bounds, I believe, from what mental health looked like as a societal topic 10, 15 years ago. I think also it's important to note too that like a lot of these issues are generational issues, right? Like when we look at someone's behavior and try to understand why someone does something, right? And I'm not just saying like, using drugs or something like that. I'm, it could be anxiety, depression, ways of dealing with stress, coping mechanisms, whatever. But these issues are generational, right? Like most, if not all people are a byproduct of the people who raise them, oftentimes, parents. And they're the way they are because their parents were a certain way. And right. And that goes on and on and on as far back as obviously there's changes in the timeline, if you will, but, there's motifs and threads there that run very deep. And it takes a lot of effort to break some of those. If there's negative behavior, it takes a lot of effort to break that. And so I think it's important to note that too, that it's not an overnight process in a lot of these cases. Whether it's a mild case of anxiety or whether it's something that's much more severe, I think it's important to understand that it takes time to break behavior and patterns that are really generational. If you look at it, if you zoom out and look at it at a 50,000 foot view.
Absolutely. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and I think that's apparent too for your mental stability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about the growth of the business. What would you say have been some of your key growth strategies to attract new mental health patients? How did you get from 2019 to where you are today?
Yeah. So without going into like all the secret sauce, we've done, I think, what a lot of companies have done at our size and scale. Social media always is, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok now. A lot of platforms spend heavily on these platforms. We don't really spend much on social media now at all. We've really leveraged a lot of high authority domains that we partnered with to kind of drive inbound traffic to us, online ads on different key media assets and things like that, to drive inbound traffic. That's really kind of been what we focused on up to date. I think as we continue to scale, I think some of those platforms or assets that we advertise on, I think they have ceilings that I think we'll hit at some point, and then we'll have to look at more kind of I say social media like traditional media now, because it's billboards are a thing of the past, but we'll have to look at more traditional media in the sense of social media and some of these other kind of common platforms where platforms advertise on. And I think also we're also deepening a lot of our relationships with the payers. I think we're also seeing in the marketplace today a lot of payers acquiring platforms like ours. And I think as payers and these platforms, I'll call them, find their dance partners, I think you'll see a lot more tighter integration between the payer and the digital health provider. So I think that will also be a key strategy for us as we continue to scale.
Sure. And how rare is it to be able to get in-network contracts for telehealth therapy solutions?
I don't want to say it's easy, because it's not. But I've dealt with payer contracting since 2015 in other capacities, and there's definitely advantages to contracting a digital platform versus a brick and mortar facility. I think it's easier to track outcomes. The overhead is less. It's more scalable. You can make changes within the organization more efficiently, right? Building a new feature on an app is much easier than training 300 employees at a hospital or something like that. So
sure.
I think there's a lot of value add that's getting baked into some of these partnerships. And I think the payers want to, for the most part, partner with online platforms that put an emphasis on outcomes tracking and really understanding, because that's really what it's about, right? Payers don't care how much you bill them. They want to understand, they want to know and understand how effective the care is that you're delivering. And so I think the platforms that put an emphasis on tracking the outcomes and providing quality care are the ones that are going to win long term.
Yeah, you see a lot of the payers trying to shift to value-based care programs. And I think a lot of those programs, they're trying to include the mental health aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because like we talked about before, they're understanding
the connectivity.
If you can reduce someone's anxiety X amount of points, it's, less hospital admissions, less ER admissions. If there is an admission, it's less days admitted.
Sure.
Hypertension, there's all these, things that they have the data, right? So like, we don't see that entirely at the provider level, but we know that there is improvement. And as these relationships deepen with the payers, if you can plug into their data sets, you can really begin to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and understand and really understand. And the payers sit at the center of all this because they see all the claims data, they see all the diagnosis codes. In some cases, they can see the outcomes.
Sure.
And so I think that's a large part of what's driving a lot of what we see today.
Sure. So you are the technology and the service provider. Tell me a little bit more about technologies or processes that you guys are using to streamline different operations, whether it's automations on marketing, automations on the intake process, or technologies for patient care.
Yeah, so we're doing all of that. So we started the company off the shelf software. We used kind of like canned licensed software that we used to kind of build to a certain point.
Sure.
And we realized after a year or two into it, my goal was always to build an app, but we realized that we were building workflows around the software instead of building the software around the workflows that we felt were best suited for the providers and for the clients.
Sure.
And so it became apparent that not in terms of like technological limitations, right? It was more issues around the companies that we were contracted with for the licensing the software from, their product roadmap and our feature request list didn't always align, right? Or if they did, they were building that when they did launch that feature, they were building a common denominator feature that kind of fit all of their customers, not just us, which is understandable. That's what they do. And that's what they should do. It just became apparent for us that we weren't going to be able to scale in the way that we wanted to without building our own technology. So
sure.
Long story short, we did build our own technology. We launched it, and we focused a lot, like you asked before. We focused a lot on automation, automating more of it around operational automations. Like understanding what's happening. Did the session happen? Did it occur? Did it not occur? Why did it not occur? Making sure that notifications, and when you're scheduling across 5 time zones. And matching availabilities. It seems like a simple task, but it quickly becomes like a nightmare matrix.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time looking at operational efficiency with simple like what you would think is a simple thing like availability and scheduling or rescheduling.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time looking at where we can find operational efficiencies in categories like that within the product.
Sure. How long did it take to build out your own software?
End to end, we're probably about a year. Hindsight's always 2020. If we did it again today, we could probably do it in about less than half that time.
Yeah.
But there's a silver lining to everything. We have a deep understanding now of how our own product works. We have the ability to kind of change it, at will if we need to. And, you don't know until you know, right? And so some of these things you just have to do it and be open for the journey to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. As long as you're learning as you go, there's no such thing as a complete failure.
Right. Right.
Now,
you just learned 100 ways not to do something.
What are the top new initiatives going into 2023 for you guys?
Really scaling our provider network.
Okay.
I think we briefly chatted about this before, but we spend a lot of time. We really think of ourselves having two customers, right? We have the therapists, and then we have the providers, and then the clients, right? The end users or clients, if you will.
Yeah.
We spend as much, if not more, time thinking about the provider experience as we do the client experience.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, there's no shortage in demand on the client side for mental health services. I read some statistics the other day that I think if this was in behavioral addiction care, but like if everyone who needed substance use treatment went to a facility today, there's like enough beds in the US for like maybe 2% of those people. If everyone went at one time. I think mental health, network capacity, if you sum it all together in the United States, is probably in a similar position.
Yeah.
So really for us, it's continuing to evolve the product, and as important, if not more important, focus on not just scaling out the provider network, but the quality and efficiency of the provider network.
What is the strategy behind having a provider network that can use your platform based on however often or frequently they'd like to treat patients versus having an internal team of employees that are your providers?
Yeah. So, I think there's a number of things when we look at it. So when we look at it as a lot of providers, even if I know providers personally that even if they work at a facility or a clinic 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, they still do Saturday sessions or evening sessions or things like that in their private practice, even if their private practice isn't their primary source of income.
Got it.
And I think providers, like having autonomy.
Yep.
They went to school for 6+ years. They're highly efficient at what they do, highly skilled at what they do. They got into it to help people and provide care. And so we want to be something that enables and extends their ability to do that. And so when we think about it, we think that providing an experience that gives as much autonomy to the provider as possible while reducing back office work, we think is a winning strategy and something that appeals to most providers that want to keep their autonomy and flexibility. And if they want to work on multiple platforms, they can, right? Like, we're focused on building our value and the quality of our platform. And we think that if we continue to do that, that's going to be beneficial for us and them long term.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You're really taking a lot of the nuances away from growing an individual practice and allowing these providers to focus on what they love to do the most, treat patients. Mm-hmm. Now, what comes first? Say you're entering a new market, the patient volume or having the providers in place?
I think it's chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you don't have a business at all if there's no providers on your platform. So, from our experience, we started with one clinician, and we ran like that for 2 months, I think, at the beginning, just trying to understand some of the pain points and understanding, how to structure some of the workflows that we needed to enable scale. And we went from 2, I think, to 5 in like a month, and then 5 to 10, and kind of scaled up from there. So I think, just, logically, I think you have to have a provider first. But it's a great question because a lot of platforms that we've seen, I won't mention names, but there's some massive platforms out there that overhired clinicians in a large way. And then were unable to, not that the demand wasn't there, they couldn't fill the capacity that they created fast enough. And it created a poor provider experience, because the clinician is sitting on the platform for 2-3 months with one referral potentially, and thinking that either A, the business doesn't have the referral capacity, or B, they do, but they don't know what they're doing. Right. And so it was just, we've seen that happen in a couple cases. I think some of those companies have learned from that and have started to turn their ships around, which is great because we need the capacity in the marketplace. Yeah. But I say all that because we want to learn as much as we can from what happens outside of our walls as much as what happens inside. And we spend a lot of time trying to keep that balance of what the right, we spend a lot of time asking our clinicians what their capacity is, how many referrals they want. Yeah. If there is attrition, refilling their caseload as quickly as possible, at the desired level. And we could go higher faster. But if we disrupt that balance of that, it's like a stepped up process on both sides. You hire this X amount of therapists, and you onboard X amount of clients, and then you study, and then so it's kind of like, it's kind of like waves of hiring that we do,
Sure.
to make sure that we don't overextend or underextend, but it's just as much art as it is science, because you're dealing with people, and
Yeah.
it's not software. And so, we have to pay attention to it closely.
It is quite a puzzle and balancing act.
Yeah.
So tell me, what has been some of your strategies to attract high quality employees during a time of staffing issues? Maybe not even employees, just contractors that can be servicing your patients.
Yeah. COVID was really tough. I remember in 2019, we could put an ad on Indeed and have, 300 applicants that were mostly qualified, within a week. COVID, you would put the same spend behind a job post, and you'd have like three people in a week respond, and maybe only one was qualified.
Wow.
So there definitely was, a huge crunch during COVID.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that attributed to that. Fast forward to today, we spend a lot of time listening to what the clinicians are looking for, right? Like, not everyone, it's just about comp. It might be flexibility. It might be, we have an automation tool that saves them X amount of time, with their note taking, let's say. And so we really try to understand, and we're upfront, right? Like, if we're not the right fit, if they're looking for something more or something less, we'll tell people that. And I think people appreciate that, our approach, right? It's a somewhat slower approach in terms of growth. But I believe we have high retention on both the client side and on the provider side, because we pay attention to what people are looking for when they come to the platform. And we do some things too that, like we pay our clinicians weekly regardless. So they get paid weekly instead of biweekly or monthly. Some platforms, pay monthly, or in some cases biweekly. So we do some things to try to maintain an edge as far as how we take care of our clinicians. But we're in constant communication with them so that they understand that they're not just some user on the platform, that we really care about maintaining the culture, on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you treat them as one of your clients, but they are really the front line of defense to treat your actual clients, which is the patients, right? And they're the ones that drive the business. So it's important that those contractors are very ingrained with your vision and your mission and your company culture. Although they are not a W-9 employee, they need to almost be treated like a partner.
Yeah. And we see them as our partners, right? Like I said before, we understand in our experience that they care a lot about autonomy. Yep. And it really is a partner approach, right? Like I said, we look at them as our customers just as much as we look at, the end user, the end client as our customer. Because we believe quality care at the client, at the end user level, at the client level, is all predicated on the quality, of the provider, and if they're having a better experience on our platform, then we believe that will enable a quality end user client experience.
Sure. And James, I'll leave you with this question. We've learned so much, and I really appreciate you sharing a lot of these insights with ReachLink and how you guys have gotten to where you are today. Tell me a little bit about the culture at ReachLink. How would you describe that to people that have never experienced working with you guys?
Are you talking about on the admin side or on the provider side?
Both.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we really believe that, and I think I forget which. There's a famous CEO that I think said this, but if you focus on your people, right, your partners, members, employees, if you focus on them in a positive way, they'll focus on your customers in a positive way, and we really believe that. So we're very we're very pro employee. We've been a remote company since before COVID, right? Like since inception, we've been not just on the provider side, but on the administrative side as well. We've been 100% remote company. We've had very flexible, policies as far as time off and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're somewhat competitive given that we're, a middle stage company.
Sure.
But beyond that, I think it's listening and understanding, right? Like we spend a lot of time talking, but within the employee group as well as with, to the provider group. And I think that goes a long way today, especially in the world of work from home. Like there's an endless amount of work to be done as far as cues that need to be responded to and tasks that need to be handled and all that kind of stuff. But people I think people today care just as much about the mission of the company as they do kind of comp or benefits or any of these other things. And when you can do well by doing good and you practice what you preach, right? Like you can have a social mission and have a really, harsh, internal environment. But if you practice what you preach, and your internal culture aligns with your external mission, which we strive to do, I think that goes a long way. So in terms of actual numbers, we've had, I don't think we've ever fired anyone.
Wow.
Maybe once or twice. We've had very few people resign over the last 3 years. Most people have stayed with us since beginning, which in startup world is from my experience is unheard of.
Yep.
The startup environment is not for everyone. And so, for me, I know it's kind of a long answer to the question, but for me, it's really our people, our company. And we have to care about them as much as we do the customer. I think if we care as much or more about them as we do our customer, then our customers will be well taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It sounds like you've really surrounded yourself with some very reliable people that, you've been working remotely and you're a startup and you're expecting a lot of people to be problem solvers because this is just a lot of new territory for all these initiatives. So you're empowering people, right? Like you're making your team realize that I can't do this without you. And we're all together in this. There's no hierarchy of importance here. Everyone has different roles and responsibilities, but we're all really working to progress one step at a time congruently. And we're, when one of us wins, we all win together.
100%. I couldn't say it better myself.
Well, that is awesome to hear. And I could see why you have such low turnover. And you guys have grown tremendously. It sounds like in the short period of time you've been open for business. So keep doing what you're doing, James. Thank you again for your time today. Cheers to you and your team to providing an innovative solution for all those people out there that are suffering with mental health and behavioral issues. We know that there's not enough platforms out there like yours. Hopefully you guys are able to continue growing and reaching more and more patients month by month, year by year. My personal opinion is everyone needs a mental health professional in their life. The frequency is unknown, but everyone needs that support one time or another. So thank you for making this service more accessible.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate coming on. It's been a great discussion. And like I said, all the topics have been super relevant and are things that we're facing on a daily basis. So it's great to be able to talk about them with someone who kind of lives in that world and understands it. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it was our pleasure. And we'll definitely follow up with you in a few months and we'll bring you back on for a second episode to hear what's the latest things happening in the mental health space and learn more about ReachLink.
I'd love to come on. Thank you.
Thanks again, James.